Our first speaker is a star in the betting industry, and he will be introducing SBR favorite Drew Martin. You know him from Sportsbit, and I believe he played the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's an incredible capper that we can all learn from. So let's give some love to my man, Mr. Teddy Covers.
Bueller?
Yell it, buddy.
Bueller? Bueller? Thanks so much for being here, guys. And I'm going to start out, I wanted to do some thanking as well right from the get-go. So please bear with me for just a moment. But there's a lot of people that got to be thanked for this. And let's start with you guys for showing up. Yeah. All right? For a conference that really wasn't put together until about 3 months ago. To have an audience like this is quite an accomplishment, and you guys taking the time out of your lives to come down and hang out with us for the weekend is awesome. I appreciate each and every one of you coming down here. I want to thank SBR. Well, first, give you guys a round of applause. Let's go. I want to thank SBR for putting all this together. Cynthia, Zach, Deb, Ariel, Maddie, Justin, Sonia, everybody else. I know I'm forgetting the names, but you guys busted ass. You guys to put this together again. We haven't started. We're just starting right now. All the feedback that I got from everyone out in the audience yesterday, nothing but positive. So, job well done, at least so far. All we can do now is screw it up. I want to thank the guys from Covers for being here, helping us sponsor. And, of course, the guys from Bet Online, Intertops, and UWager. There wouldn't be a conference without these three fine offshore books. We're going to talk a lot today about the concept of having multiple outs. I know a lot of you guys who aren't in Vegas tend to bet with bookies more than sports books. That's something that we hope to correct over the course of the next 48 hours. But the sponsors, Bet Online, Intertops, and UWager, for putting this thing together, getting us down here. And of course, that's it for the thanks. I'm going to start with a little anecdote. I moved to Las Vegas in 1998. There was a conference sponsored by, I'll say their name, Vegas Insider. Boo. A conference sponsored by Vegas Insider. And I was literally sitting in the audience like you guys are now, saying, I'm serious about sports betting. I'm interested in sports betting. I want to learn. 5 years later, I was talking at that same conference as an expert. So it's doable. If you guys are willing to put in the time and effort and energy into becoming successful at betting on sports, a rise is most assuredly a possibility for you. And of course, there's no reason to think that there's anyone in this room that's not capable of A, making good money, and B, making a nice brand for themselves if they choose to do so. But just to say, being out there in the audience, you know, there's something to be gained from this. And I hope, what do we have? We have 7 or 8 different really good speakers. I'm excited about the guys we have talking over the course of the next 2 days. You'll be able to get a ton of good information you can bring back home and use to start making money if you haven't been making money already. So my topic is differences in approach and futures between college and the NFL. I'm going to talk about that, but I'm not going to do it dry. I hope not. That sounds a little bit dry. What I want to talk, though, is get into the concept of futures. And what you see with traditional futures, odds to win the Super Bowl, odds to win the World Series. You know, I'm going to focus on football, but the same thing goes for odds to win the NBA title, odds to win the college basketball national championship, et cetera, et cetera. If you watch Sportsbit on a regular basis, or if you watched it this week, we had a great graphic up there talking about what the house hold percentages are for future book wagers. And I'll give you a hint. If you didn't see it, it ain't minus 110. You know, you're not laying 11 to win 10. The best books, including the books we have here, you'll be laying 25 cents, you know, on average. The lay price is minus 125. At other books, you'll find higher than that, minus 130, minus 140, minus 150. So, given that concept alone, I'm not a huge fan of betting your basic futures. There's a reason that every sports book in Las Vegas has the odds to win whatever prominently displayed year-round. You know, the day after the Super Bowl ends, boom, here are the odds for next year's Super Bowl. Here, guys, come on, come bet them. There are better ways to get at it, but there's so many issues, so many flaws with traditional futures. You have the house takeout issues. You have as the odds get adjusted throughout the course of the season, what will happen is, they'll take money on whoever. The Atlanta Falcons last year were taking money every week. Falcons win the Super Bowl. Falcons win the Super Bowl. You see the odds come down as the season progresses. You don't always see the odds go up for teams that aren't attracting the same type of betting action. So the odds start out bad and they get worse as the year progresses at a lot of books, which isn't necessarily a good thing. And of course, one of the things that I hate the most about traditional futures, one team's going to win the Super Bowl. 2 teams are going to win their conferences. 8 teams are going to win their divisions. But of the 1 team that's going to win the Super Bowl, 31 teams aren't. Of the 2 teams that win their conferences, 15 teams from each conference won't. 30 teams won't. From the 8 teams to win the division, 24 teams won't. And you can't bet against any of those teams. All you can do is bet on a team with traditional futures. I want this team to win the Super Bowl. I want this team to win the Stanley Cup or whatever. You can't bet against them. So that, in my mind, is something of a flaw. And of course, last but not least, and this is something that Drew's going to touch on a lot when we talk about money management later in this talk, you lock your money up. Your money is locked. You're not able to do anything with that percentage of your bankroll throughout the course of the entire football season. If you make a future wager right now, I want to bet, who cares, the Bengals. I want to bet the Bengals to win the Super Bowl this year. That's great. Okay. But now that money's locked up. You can't use it until the end of the Super Bowl is finished. So you need a deeper bankroll and money specifically set aside for these future wagers. And to be honest, most people don't have it. So those are just some of the reasons. Oh, there's more. Sorry, I keep looking at my notes over here, but I have to because I got too much up here to actually give a coherent talk without looking back once in a while. But here's the other factor with with traditional future book odds. Leicester City, what was it, last year, 5,000 to 1? You'll never see 5,000 to 1 again. It won't happen. The books got burned. Look what happened when the Rams won the Super Bowl at 200 to 1. You've never seen a 200 to 1 since, not a live one. Yeah, you can get the Jets at 125 to 1 right now. I mean, literally, that's what the markets have done. Because the books they didn't get burned. They got frickin' destroyed with things like Leicester City and the Rams. What happens? They've realized you don't need to have 5,000 to 1 odds or 200 to 1 odds to attract money on the teams that people aren't betting on. You can have much lower odds and you'll still get the same amount of money coming in on those teams and have less liability. So the real bargains when it comes to the future book and future odds, they've been taken out. Your super value plays, they may have been there 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Modern era, circa 2017, you're not going to find a lot of live, very long shots on the future board. Hence, my distaste in the modern market for futures. Now, that's not to say there's no room whatsoever for betting futures. Obviously, there is, and even odds to win something. I'm going to talk about season wins in a few moments, which is the future bet that I like the most. But and then, okay, we talk about the long shots. Let's talk about the short chalk. You want to bet the Patriots? Think about this concept, okay? You could have locked your money up the day after the Super Bowl last year and gotten New England to win the Super Bowl at 4 to 1, 3 to 1. You could have made a very similar bet at the start of the regular season. You got the Patriots, 3 to 1, 4 to 1 range. You could have made the same bet in October, 3 to 1, 4 to 1 range. You could have made the same bet at the start of the playoffs where maybe they were plus 250 at the start of the playoffs, plus 200. In the Super Bowl itself, you could have gotten them at plus 15 to 1. You didn't have to work that hard. So all year, you locked your money up from the day after the Super Bowl to get 3 to 1. In the game itself, you could have gotten better odds than that. Okay. I think my point is clear. The chalk from the future book, yeah, they're more likely to win. There's zero value betting the chalk when it comes to future book odds generally. Even if that chalk's going to win it all, you will have other opportunities to bet them and other ways to get at them rather than a standard traditional, walk up to the window or go or walk or click on your account and just log in and boom, I'm going to make a future bet. And that's why, again, these bets are so prominently displayed in all the casinos in Las Vegas. And of course, the Twitter stuff. People, Twitter brag. Everyone loves, look what I got. I got whoever at 40 to 1. And it's all over Twitter. Oh, that guy's really sharp. I can say this for fact, one of the guys who got famous on Twitter for having future bets, large future bets on relative long shot teams, he was betting every team, okay? He was betting every team, and then, look how smart I am. Which is not, again, if you have that kind of bankroll, you're willing to put $1 million into futures, knock yourself out. You can brand yourself that way, but there are better ways to do it. The Twitter brag stuff, you know, it's nice to build a brand, no question, but in terms of actually making money betting futures, it's not the way to go, in my opinion. Now, there are some things that we can definitely do in terms of getting at the future markets without falling into some of the negative traps that I've talked about just now with that. And that includes the odds to win the Super Bowl. And of course, you're talking about approaches. You know, you're not getting true odds with the future book. Your long shot odds are down. Your chalk odds aren't ever good. You're locking up your money. There are situations when you see a team that's quote unquote live in preseason, in July, in August for the NFL. Say, all right, this team's live and the markets aren't seeing it. Maybe the time to get on that wager is now. And again, I'll bring up the Falcons last year. Of course, if you bet the Falcons to win the Super Bowl, you didn't win your wager. You got a lot of action with it. It was live for a long time, but you didn't cash that ticket. That ticket ended up, you know, getting ripped up, going in the trash, or saving it for tax purposes, or whatever you want to do it. If you bet the Falcons over 7 wins, obviously that was not a sweat last year. But the point is that when you're not getting the true odds, you're not getting the great odds on long shots. But if you're going to bet long shots, like, let's say, Atlanta last year, the time to do it is early. The time to do it is in August, sometimes July. Barack Obama, I had a Barack Obama 100-to-1 ticket in my pocket when, you know, your live long shots, if you get them early, and again, you're going to talk about politics. It's not just football betting. The concepts that we're talking about today, obviously it's a football betting conference, but the concepts that we're talking about are certainly translatable to other types of wagers, whether it's politics, whether it's basketball, whether it's you know, odds to win the Academy Awards, whatever the concepts are. Your long shots, if you do want them, you do want them relatively early in the equation because that value gets sucked out of them. By the October 1st last year, the Falcons were not, you know, 30 or 40 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. So I have no hesitation. If you're going to get involved with this type of future wagers and you're looking for your long shots, I would not recommend betting a team that's short chalk. But for your longer shots, and you know they're good, you got to bet them relatively early. Leicester City and your, you know, St. Louis Rams are examples of that. So you do want to get, if the team is alive, will allow you to do that, certainly. Mid-season, you know, you can find some good options in the future book. Last year, the Packers had that, they had the 1-4 skid mid-season, and all of a sudden, the books that do drop odds, but there's boom, a ton of value on Green Bay. And they closed out and were alive. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but they were alive to make the playoffs and so on. When you find a team, I like to look, you know, baseball right around the All-Star break. Hey, who's live? You know, who's live that's sitting at 40 to 1 or 50 to 1 right now? In the NFL, you won't necessarily get the 40 or 50 to 1s, but you can get some 30 or 20 to 1s that are most assuredly, you know, 4-4 at the halfway mark. But you look at the back half of the schedule, say, wow, this team's trying to make a run. You look at the, you know, whatever kind of statistical evaluations you use, say, hey, this team's trying to make a run. I know when it comes to football, most of us are watchers. And when you watch a team, all right, hey, they're capable. Or no, they're not really capable. They've been a little bit lucky. But you can and will find pretty good opportunities mid-season at times betting the futures. You know, college basketball contenders mid-season. Sometimes, you know, if someone's off to a slow start, you can get involved there. I wouldn't recommend this for the NBA. NBA, the only thing that ever wins is chalk. But literally. But for, you know, sports like baseball or basketball, there are definitely opportunities with teams that are mediocre mid-season that may well be live later on. So that's definitely something I would look for. And again, you know, I talked about the concept of the Patriots. You know, right now the Patriots are 3 to 1. If you bet them in October, you know what they're going to be? 3 to 1. You know, maybe plus 275. You bet them at the start of the playoffs, you know what they're going to be? I don't know, plus 250. You know, 2.5 to 1. maybe 2 to 1. You're not losing a ton by not betting a team like New England now, is my concept. So that's one. There's no reason to bet chalk whatsoever when it comes to the future. But one, it's time for me to have a sip of water. I like the drama. Pin drop. Nice. Okay. There's a better concept than simply betting these teams in the future, and that's a concept called the rollover. Okay? I used a rollover for Ohio State when Ohio State won the national title. It was with Cardell Jones at quarterback. And it's real simple. Here's a team that you want. I can bet them in the future book at 10 to 1. Or I can bet them on the money line in the first game of the playoffs. And if they win, I will take that money and bet it all on the money line on the second game of the playoff. And that ended up producing closer to 20, I think it was 22 to 1, somewhere in that range. So you can take the easy bet, all right, Ohio State to win it. Or you can bet them on the money line in the first game as dogs and then do it again in the second game as dogs. You can do that for favorites as well. You can do start of the NFL playoffs. Teams are going to have either 3 games or 4 games. You know, the teams that play the first weekend will have 4 potentials. Teams that have the byes have 3. Say, all right, rather than make a future book wager on this team, I'm going to bet them on the money line in the first game. And when they win, I'm going to roll that over to the second game. And when they win, I'm going to roll that over to the third game. At the end, you're making a pretty substantial wager that will likely significantly exceed the exact same bet. Just the one, you can just go, oh, click and make it the lazy way. Or you can do it the professional way, which is you take the time, you shop around for book one. The other advantage, of course, if you have multiple books, which you need to have. Am I going to drumbeat that in enough? Whatever. People bet with one book and try to beat, I mean, you can't do it. You cannot win betting at one book. You shouldn't say that. You can win, but you're fighting with one hand behind your back. You know, if you have multiple books, guess what? Now you have 3 arms and 5 arms that you can fight with instead of just one. It really is a significant difference. But when you look at the advantage, another advantage that you can shop, you know, with one book, you're making your future bet, there it is. If you have multiple books and you're betting the rollover method, okay, which is simple, you're betting them on the money line. Guess what? You can make this wager at Intertops this week, and this wager at U-Wager next week, and this wager at BOL the following week, and get the best of the number at each of those with each of those bets, as opposed to just with the one book. So it allows you to shop from week to week. It allows you to shop within the week as the odds ebb and flow throughout the course of any given week. So it gives you more options to turn a little into a lot with the future book. And of course, that's the commune. That's, you know, how'd they build the big casinos in Vegas? How'd they build the Grand Casino here? People are always trying to turn a little into a lot. It's doable, but it's tough, obviously, when you're talking about these concepts with the future book. What I'm going to talk about is not turning a little into a lot. I'm going to turn it to standard 11 to 10 wagers, or type wagers. Of course, that's with season win totals. You know, I'm not, again, I should say I hate the future book, but I kind of hate your standard future wagers. There are better ways to do it. But the future book you can really take advantage of is the win totals. You know, and when it comes to, you know, this is a football betting conference. When it comes to college football win totals, they're beatable. When it comes to NFL win totals, Matt Holt will tell you, he's talking next. Cantor CG Technology Open 2008. They've had one winning season. The sportsbook, who's taken 11 to 10, has had one winning season when it comes to NFL win total bets. So don't tell me they're not beatable, because they're getting beaten year in, year out. They're beatable. And that's, of course, since opening in 2008. And, of course, the advantage with win totals, and there's so many of them, but you can bet against teams. You know, you can't bet against any team in the future book. You can bet against a team in the win total. Guess what? Who's going to stink? I don't know. You know, you want to bet against the Browns last year? Here, you can bet. You can't bet them not to win the Super Bowl, but you can bet them under 4 wins or 4.5 wins. You know, you want to bet against the Jets this year? Knock yourself out. You can't do that unless you're dealing with the season win totals. And of course, we talked about the extra juice that gets pulled out of the wagers. Anytime you have more than 2 concepts, you know, wise guys, the pros in Vegas really tend to look for yes-no options. It's either going to be A or B. Even when you get into something like winning divisions, where it's A, B, C, or D, the house cut is higher. When there's 32 teams, the house cut is even more. So with the season win total bets, over, under, there's two options. They're going over, they're going under. You can find minus 110 with that, and that's widely available. And those, again, you're not going to bet a little to win a lot. It's not a let's get rich quick scheme. You guys know that. You're all here. You know this isn't a get rich quick scheme. This is a slow and steady grind. That's just the nature of it. And there's certainly an excitement level when you do hit those big scores. And there's concepts for hitting big scores that are better than the future book. But the reality of it is most of this is a 1 foot in front of the other, slow and steady grind. I mean, that's just the standard methodology for getting from here to there when it comes to bankroll growth and bankroll management. There aren't a whole lot of shortcuts to that. And you know, people like shortcuts. People like the easy way. People like, yeah, I'll just click on the future and I don't have to worry about it. I'll bet I'm going to win the Super Bowl and I don't have to worry about it. But all right, you know, I'll bet this 8-teamer, and when it cashes and I hit my, 20 grand, then I'm loaded and I'm bankrolled up for the season. Obviously, the easy method, not always the best method. So, win total wise, you can find minus 110 shops. You can bet against teams. And here's another concept. When it comes to winning the Super Bowl or winning the college football national championship or anything, concept that you're not going to make a great number. You're not going to make a number. If you're sitting there, all right, I'm going to make numbers for this. Can you realistically make a number for odds to win the Super Bowl? When you see something that's way off, you're like, this team's 50 to 1. You're like, no, they're not 50 to 1. They should be 12 to 1. You can see a difference mentally, but if you sat down and said, I'm going to try to create a number for all these teams, I'm not convinced that, myself included, would be making great numbers. That's, the bookmakers do a better job of that in general than bettors will. But you can make good numbers when it comes to season win totals. You really can. You go through the schedule, you go through the power ratings, you put together you can look, again, I hate to bring up Matthew Holt over and over again, but CG's got lines for every football game all year through week 16. You can go through the lines and get, all right, they're going to be 3-point dogs here, and which is how the numbers, how the opening numbers get made at a lot of books. They're just putting the point spread and translating that into a money line and then translating that over a 16-game season. Relatively simple math can help you create good bettable numbers for win totals. And obviously, if you have a scenario in which you're putting the time in over the summer, which obviously you're going to do if you're going to be betting these seriously, you can create pretty good numbers yourself, which are often different from the market numbers, particularly when you have perceptions about teams that aren't necessarily broader perceptions that everyone's getting. Saying, this team's live, and maybe people aren't on that. A team like, let's say, the Tennessee Titans last year, coming to the campaign that wasn't particularly hyped, but was certainly a moneymaker for those who had it. And of course, there are a lot of, there's, when you're talking about full season wagers, there's somewhat less variance with a full season wager with a future book bet than there is in any given week. In any given week in the NFL or in college football, your team might turn the ball over 4 times and fumble at the 1-yard line, and you can't believe that the punter just backed inside the 10 for the 4th time this game. There is a fair bit of randomness for any given week. When you're talking about a 16-game season in the NFL, you're making a win total bet, the randomness for any one week gets minimized, gets mitigated by the fact that you're looking over a 16-game season. So you're actually, in a sense, reducing your variance on some level. And in my mind, that's obviously something that any bettor wants. The more reduction in variance you can have when it comes to your bankroll swinging up and down, the better off you are. You'd rather have a relatively steady curve than a more bouncy curve, and not just because it's better for your bankroll growth, it's also better for your lifestyle and for your heart, as we all know. When you're talking about these concepts, and there's certainly good stuff that you can do with season wins. We talk about it a lot on sports, but again, I encourage you to go back and look at the archives. I'm not going to go into an in-depth scenario on season wins here, but I want to talk about one, at least, concepts. When you have the full season less variance. You're getting who they really are over the full campaign. But there are also definitely strength of schedule issues that are not always priced correctly into the markets. Team like the Philadelphia Eagles last year, who on paper, this is for 2016, on paper you look at their schedule and like, oh my God, it's brutal. The Eagles' schedule is absolutely brutal. And at the end of the season, what happened? The Eagles faced the single toughest schedule in the NFL. And if you bet them early and had under 7.5, and with easy cash, you bet them late at 7, you push because they won the last 2 weeks and the Cowboys sat starters in week 17. But the concept that Philadelphia's schedule, it looked tough on paper, it actually was really tough. It wasn't necessarily factored effectively into the betting markets. I don't want to go too much into basketball here, but so let me just do football for a minute. When you have weird scheduling situations, one thing I do when I'm doing my football, and weird is not the right word, when you have awkward scheduling situations, teams going to come back, teams are now playing. They don't have a bye immediately after coming back from a long road trip to London. That tends to be a negative spot. The divisional sandwich, divisional game and then a road game against somebody and then another divisional game. The divisional sandwich, the game in the middle tends to be a bad spot. And then you can go on and on down the line, the back-to-back roadies, the West Coast teams traveling east, and find bad spots per se for a number of different teams. In college football you can as well, although you'll find more of those in the NFL, and certainly when it comes to NBA season win totals, spots are huge. How many back-to-backs do they play? How many teams are they playing on the second night of back-to-backs or 4th and 5? And those scheduling variances, both in terms of the quality of opponents that get played and in terms of the nuances of the schedule itself, it's certainly something that isn't always factored into a season win total quite as well as it should be. The way the books are putting those numbers together, again, they're looking at the money line each week. Here's my power rating for Team A. Here's my power rating for Team 2. Here's a point spread. Here's a money line. Let's attract the money line and turn that into a percentage chance of winning this game, and you add them all up, and that's your win total. They're not putting the spots into the equation. So when you find a team with a spot-heavy schedule that looks great, oh, they got a bunch of good spots, or a team, oh my God, they're up against it this week, and they're up against it next week, and look, they face 3 teams coming off a bye, back to back to back. When you find teams in those type of situations, they're not necessarily priced correctly. So it's definitely something that you can find edges with the season win total marketplace. Another thing that you're going to see, again, when we talk about variance, right now, who is it? The Jags. You can bet the Jags over 6 and under 7. Right now. This book, that book. There is enormous variance in season win totals when it comes to book, especially early on. Some books will take opinions. Some books will grab the market number. Every book is going to cater to their own audience and their own liabilities. So if a book is heavy on Jags, Jaguars over money, their number is going to be higher than the market. If a book is heavy on everyone but the Jags number, their number is going to be lower. And it's just that particular book and their particular audience. You will see significant and dramatic variance from one book to the next. And that's another thing we try to talk about on SportsBit. Right when the very first, who was at South Point, opened the first numbers, and we're like, boom, this is a bad. The Browns were aligned at 4. We're like, this number's not going to be there. Not going to be there tomorrow. And it wasn't. You'll find situations like that every year with win totals where, here's a number, it's going to be there. There's variance from this book and another book. If you act quickly, you can definitely take advantage of those. And laying 110, you can find yourself some good wagers. And of course, pricing the half wins correctly. And this is a big issue when it comes to, and some of the stuff I'm not even sure I should be talking about, but what the heck? We're at a conference, and we're at a good conference. So I'm happy to share some good information, in my opinion, on this stuff. The standard rule of thumb for win totals. Teams lined at 7.5, a 7.5 minus 150 to the over is a moral equivalent of an 8 at even money. So basically, you'd say 50 cents worth of juice, excuse me, is the moral equivalent of a half win. And it is. For NFL teams lined in the middle, it's worth about 50 cents. When you start, but that 50, like the half win is worth about 50 cents worth of juice, that's a good rule of thumb. But it's really only for NFL teams in the middle. When you start talking about on the margins, How much is a half win worth between the Patriots are lined at 12.5 or 13? How much is that half win worth from a 12.5 to 13? That could be worth $1 worth of juice. That half win, whereas the standard's worth 50 cents. Because now, instead of winning 13 games, we're only going to win 14 games. At the top end, where you say, all right, you're going from 3 losses down to 2 losses for the season, that's a significant difference for even for an elite team. So at the ends, on the margins, is where you're going to find sometimes this stuff being priced wrong. The Browns will open at 4 wins. Again, they went to 4.5. The teams at the bottom are the similar story. It's worth more than 50 cents to have a half-win differential from a team 4.5 wins to, from 4.5 down to 4 or vice versa, than it is for a team in the middle of the pack. When it comes to college football, a half win can be worth $1. Easy. Literally. The difference between a 10 and 10.5 for a team like, I don't know, what's the Alabama line? 10.5? Like 11? Yeah, 10.5. At the very top, that's worth $1. They're asking them to win 10 between 10 games and 10.5, and it gets your money back if they go 10 and 2. We're talking about between 10.5 and 11. They got to win 12 games if they're lined at 11, versus they got to win 11 games. They have to go, undefeated regular season versus not undefeated regular season. It's at least worth $1. You see that on the bottom too. UNLV was lined at what, 2.5 wins, or you don't see a lot of teams lined in college football at the very bottom. But the weakest teams that you do find, there's not a whole lot of games that they're going to be capable of winning. Just like there's not a whole lot of games that the Alabamas are capable of losing. But when you try to price in how much each of those half wins is worth, or half losses is worth, it can often be significantly more than the markets are giving credit for. One more reason why you can find value with many of these over-under wagers in both college football and the NFL. But in general, college football, the half win is worth more than it is in the NFL. The markets don't always price it that way. Yeah, I guess this is the time to put these two things in here. You can't get into trouble, Jimmy, that was a great opener, Bag. I appreciate that. But you can't get into trouble when you're making deposits at sports books. You can't, because you're not going to spend more than you have. You're not going to lose more than you have. You can get into trouble when you're betting on credit. And that's where people that have problems get into their problems with gambling. If you're betting on credit and you're having issues, stop. If you need help, get help. But the better way to do it is bet what you have. Don't try to be, oh, well, if I can win these 6 wagers week 1, then I'm going to be in great. No. Bet what you have to bet with. And if that means, and again, Drew's going to get into this much more in a few minutes. But when you're betting on credit is the only way to get into trouble. If you're betting cash, okay, you're broke, but you're not in debt for the next 20 years, and working off to pay your bookie. And that's a lesson. I was lucky I only had to learn it once. There's some people that need to learn that lesson 3, 4, 5 times, and if you're in that situation, it's not necessarily a great thing. Bankroll-wise, I know that the majority of bettors don't put a separate bankroll. Just what you have to bet that week is whatever, your spare cash or whatever you have in your account, and it's not something that's locked away. If you are in position to legitimately, you have a bankroll and you want to put it to use, my advice would be you want to split it up. By splitting it up, I track everything, literally everything separately. I track my straight bets, and this is my bankroll for straight bets. I got my totals, and this is what I'm using for totals. I've got my win totals and my future bets. I've got my in-running, and you're tracking each of these separately. My halftime bets, I'm tracking separately. Side totals, half, in-game, win totals. You say only suckers bet parlays. I bet parlays. I bet long shot, underdog, money line parlays, and I have a specific bankroll that I use just for that. And it's the kind of thing that I know I'm probably going to get paid twice a year on it. I don't want to freak out because I'm sucking money out of my bankroll every week to do this. So at the start of the year, this money is in that account. And hopefully, once or twice a year, this account will get replenished in a significant way. It's the same concept with the win totals, okay? Where if you're going to do this seriously, future-wise, okay, with win totals, you're going to get paid basically 4 times a year. You know, I'm betting NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, 4 win totals. And 2 of the paid, you know, you get paid in December and you get paid in January for NFL and college. You know, you get paid in October for MLB, you get paid in April for NBA. So I mean, there's 4 times a year that money's going into that part of my bankroll. I need to be able to make wagers, not necessarily year round, but for, you know, you're making wagers all summer in football, you're making wagers all fall for NBA, you're making wagers in, you know, February and March for baseball. The money's not coming in at the same time as going out. So if you're not properly bankrolled for your future and you haven't separated out a piece of your bankroll for future bets, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be cutting in to alternative wagers that you could make throughout the course of the various seasons. That's why I would encourage you, make a slice. Here's a dime. I'm putting a dime into future book wagers, you know, or 10 dimes or 20 bucks. It doesn't matter how. It's not, the concept works regardless of wager size. Split it up and track the results of your different wagers. Am I winning with my halftimes or am I losing? How many of you guys know? How many of you guys like has a spreadsheet? Here's all my halftime bets. Here's all my in-running bets. Here's all my sides. Here's all my totals. Here's all my futures. If you have spreadsheets and you're tracking this stuff, you can really see what you're good at and what you're not good at, and that allows you to increase your bankroll size and the stuff you're good at, and decrease your your wager size on the things you're good at, and decrease your wager size. Yes, decrease your wager size on the stuff you're not good at, the stuff you're working on. Yeah, it's okay. Action. We all want action. You know, that's fine. Don't blow your bankroll on it. So tracking stuff separately, so key, and especially with the futures, it's something that you really have to make the effort to do. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a position where here it is, you know, here it's October. I got to get all my NBA wagers. Oh crap! I got 16 bucks. You know, that's not the goal, obviously. So certainly, you need to have you need to be able to have the capital to tie up. And of course, you know, you don't want to kill your ROI and have money locked up when there could be insanely good wagers out there. So you need to be liquid enough to be able to make your future wagers and be in a position to make your daily or weekly or monthly wagers, whatever wagers that you make, which isn't always easy for someone who's starting. That being said, it's doable, and if you take the time and effort to do it, it will help you. I genuinely believe that. And of course, you know, our gamblers are so greedy. We are. Everyone wants to win a little to get a lot. If you talk to someone on investing, say, I'm going to give you 20% ROI on your money this year. Where do I sign up? You know, should you give me 12%? Where do I sign up? And yet bettors, you know, oh, well, yeah, I won a half unit last week. Oh, nothing. I didn't, you know. It's like we don't take small ROIs. That's fine to take a small ROI. It's what we do. Little edges over time. Little edges over time. That's how you make money betting on sports. And that means but look for positive ROI situations. But you can't obsess over the fact that you're not getting these ridiculous returns that you're not going to get in any type of investment that you make. Sports bettors are greedy and they're impatient. As a general rule of thumb, it's okay to be greedy. You know, I'm not up here to go, oh, greed is good. I'm not going to do a Wall Street speech. But, you know, it's okay to be hungry and to want to, but the realistic way of being greedy is make good wagers and then your bankroll will increase. That's the way to do it, as opposed to trying to bet a little to win a lot, which is, you know, still standard. So, and of course, the gambler's fallacy. This is something that I have to bring up when it comes to the future book and why it's so important to keep your bankrolls separate. What do bettors do when they lose? They chase. And it's the dumbest thing out there. And I was lucky. A lot of the mistakes that bettors made, I made them all, you know. But I was able to make them early and learn from them. I had this bowl season where I had a good regular season, a bunch of money, started bowl season and lost and doubled up and lost the national championship. And there I was working literally like my 2 month salary went to my bookie and I was eating frickin' ramen noodles, and I learned from that lesson. When you're losing, you bet less, not more. You cannot chase. When you're winning, all right, you have a good season, you have a good week, you're seeing things clearly. People want to lock in profits when they're like, you have a good read on 15 different teams right now. You're like, oh, but I've already won a couple times. I'm going to lower. I want to make sure. When you're seeing things clearly, you bet more. When you're struggling and not seeing things clearly, you bet less. Period. When you have a separate bankroll for your future wagers, you don't get into the trap of, well, I'm running bad, I better double up. Or I'm running good, I better lock something in. No, you're keeping them separate so that level of mentality doesn't come into your mind as you're making the future book wagers. All right, I'm struggling with the sides this week. Okay, but look, my half times are good, and I got all these good future book wagers. It keeps you much more even-keeled when you're looking at your entire portfolio. Say, all right, this is going up a little bit. Oh, this has been bad. The side, oh man, I can't frickin' pick a total winner at all right now. Let's lay off the totals. Let's look at some sides. Let's look at some half times. Look at some other opportunities that you have rather than just blindly betting ahead. Important record keeping. Accurate record keeping is crucial for your success. But when it comes to future wagers, again, you're going to have them. You're going to be able to keep accurate records with them. It's just a matter of making sure that you got that percentage of your bankroll put into play. And of course, when you are making your bets, you're only getting cashed out 4 times a year essentially. It kind of forces you. It enforces some level of discipline with those because this is the money that's in this bankroll. I'm getting 4 bumps over the course of the year with whatever wagers that I had from last time. I need to be disciplined with this part of my bankroll, and that's maybe the most important thing that you can do. We're going to get to Drew in 1 minute. I don't know how much. How am I on time? Matt was supposed to make me signals. I'm golden. Keep yapping. No. What? Speak. Oh, okay. That's it. Yeah. And then, okay. So we'll do questions in just a moment. I'm going to talk about the Patriots, and I use the Patriots as an example of a team that I bet under the win total this year. We'll save that for Q&A. For now, let's get Drew and talk a little money management.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you, Sean.
Thanks, Dave. Cheers.
You got me? You got me? All right, good, good. Teddy's a little bit more seasoned in this industry than me. I think he's around 20 years in the business. I'm about to start my 4th football season without a straight job, so a little bit different perspective, but hopefully some good insights here. Guys, I've lived in Costa Rica for about 4 months now. I love it. As you can see, great scenery. The people are great. It's a great time. The beach is close. But just for a couple hours today and a couple hours tomorrow, we can really focus in and maybe win some money this football season from some good speakers, or at least not lose as much money as we have been in the past. And so you're probably asking, why should you listen to me? I'd be asking that same question. And in order to tell you, I got to give you a little bit of background on myself. I grew up in South Florida, played high school football in Broward County, which in '03 was the most recruited county in the nation. We had over 50 Division I signees, and I ended up being the first team all-county quarterback. How does that happen for an average white athletic dude with an average arm? We were really well coached, and I learned to break down game film at a young age, what the defense is doing, what the offense is doing, and how to beat it. After that, went on to Auburn, got a finance degree, then moved on to JP Morgan, parlayed that to a job in investment banking. Learned a bunch of stuff at JP Morgan, but was in the office one day and just realized I didn't love what I did. And I wanted to find something that I loved. And so I guess we can put up the first slide here. Things I learned from JP Morgan. Credit card debt. I know this is a football betting conference, but most of you are Americans, and it's a big problem there. I've heard that it's a big problem in Costa Rica as well. So get that out of your finances. Also bankroll. Don't bet too much on any one game. If you got 100 grand in the bank, don't be betting 10 grand on a game. If you got 10 grand in the bank, don't be betting $1,000 a game. Maybe try betting 500 or 250. It's more, the variance won't kill you in the end. Also, how I've used that business model of investment banking in sports betting, I found that they had really smart people at JP Morgan, but they didn't concentrate on the whole economy. They put people to concentrate on certain sectors, like finance, or technology, or consumer discretionary. And then they would give their recommendations on companies and stocks to invest in to the clients. And I thought, that's a great way to do it. And so I use that in handicapping, mostly in college football. We can go to the next slide now. And as you can see here, this is SBR odds, tough to see, but there's 32 NFL games, right? 32 NFL teams. So in any one season, or in any one weekend, there's only 16 games to choose from. Not a lot of opportunity for the odds makers to make a mistake. Not to mention it's a huge market with a lot of money, a lot of eyeballs on this market. Now we can go to the next slide. Sorry, Sophie. You got it.
Oh, it continues. This is awesome.
Por favor. Thank you. See, you can barely see this. See, this is college football, 130 teams. So any given weekend, there's 50 or 60 games. A lot of opportunity for the odds makers to make a mistake. Not to mention, to take it to the next level, you know, when the New England Patriots are playing the New York Giants on Sunday night, there's a lot of eyeballs, a lot of fan bases, a lot of money changing hands. To take it to the next level, when Oregon's playing USC, or when Michigan's playing Ohio State, Utah's playing Arizona State, a lot of fan bases, a lot of eyeballs to a little bit lesser extent. However, when you take it to small conferences, and ULM, the Warhawks, travel to San Marcos, Texas to take on the Texas State Bobcats with 2,000 people in the stadium, not on national TV, not a lot of eyeballs there, there's not a lot known about that, including the odds makers. They don't spend a lot of time on it. So I think that it's a more beatable market. There's more variance in it. And we got a money slide here. This is, a lot of what I've said is kind of opinion. We can go to the next slide, por favor. A lot of what I said is opinion, but here's where I think I can prove it. We're using BetOnline's odds right now. Average NFL line move from when BetOnline opened it till just yesterday when I did this exercise is under 1 point on a spread move. Average college football line move from when BetOnline opened to just yesterday is over 2 points per spread move. As you can see here, it's over a point difference. That might not sound like a lot, but when you talk about 2.5 points to 3.5, 3.5 to 4.5, 6.5 to 7.5, those are key numbers, the difference between wins and losses at the end of the year. So I think you can prove the variance here in making it a more inefficient market betting betting college football than the NFL, and even more so to small conference college football, like the Sun Belt, Conference USA, the MAC. Those type of conferences is where I've really focused in on and had some success. I know some of you guys are interested in getting in the industry, and I wanted to share some downsides of it because there's things I miss in life that I wanted to show you. If you're going to take what I'm doing seriously and do this, we can go to the next slide, please. If you like going to college football games at night and you're going to concentrate on beating a certain market, you can't really do that. That is a life I miss, but I just love what I do. So I wanted to share these things with you. We can go to the next slide as well. If you like tailgating, that's my wife right there, 23, in the Ronnie Brown jersey. I know I outkicked my coverage, but just wanted to show her. And you can run through the rest of them as well. So if you like grilling out, drinking with buddies, whatnot, it's kind of a life you're going to have to leave behind. But ultimately, in conclusion, whether you choose CFL, Arena Football League, WNBA, really know it better than anybody. Find a market that the odds makers aren't really seeing and really hammer it. And that's how you can kind of win in this business. One last thing. If you take one sentence from what I'm saying and remember it, this is an industry, it's vastly better to know a little bit. I take that back. It's vastly better in this industry, in sports betting, if you're trying to win, to know a lot about a little bit than to know a little bit about a lot. And I'll leave you with that.
Well done.
All right.
Fist bump, yeah. Questions? Questions? Are we doing questions? Sure.
Could you elaborate a little bit on why you're saying that particular aspect of the life you enjoyed you had to give up?
Because if you're going to watch, ULM play Idaho on Saturday, you got to break that game down. You got to know the offensive and defensive line matchups. If you're out tailgating for the Auburn LSU game, how are you going to do that? How are you going to beat the next day's openers to get an advantage on the market? You got to leave that life behind.
What was that question again? I couldn't hear it. I don't know if we got, yeah. Thanks. What was the question?
The question after the answer.
Exactly how we're working here.
I just asked Drew if he would elaborate on why he had to give up, or why one would have to give up that aspect of their life in order to pursue this.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not like a situation where you can never, ever go to a live game, but I could tell you, I could probably count on two hands how many games I've been to in the last 10 years.
Yeah, and one thing I've done is try to find like the late bowl games where they're like singled out, where you're not missing something else.
Yeah,
that's what I've tried to do.
It's not like you can never do anything, but you're going out to tailgating with your buddies every weekend before the game. If you're serious about betting on sports, it's not going to happen. Now, Saturdays and Sundays are a whole different ball game than it was when you were, a college student or even an alumni that, would go to the games on the weekend. Questions? Come on, guys, let's go. Give us some good questions. Somebody. Oh, beauty.
How you doing, guys?
Cheers.
So my question is, when you're talking about beating smaller markets and smaller conferences in college football, like North Dakota State or what have you, where would you suggest looking for information on some of those games? What are some reliable resources? A lot of those games aren't televised, maybe like websites or blogs or something like that.
No, that's a great question. One thing, North Dakota State's actually an FCS, so they're going to charge you a little more. As far as most books will charge you like -115 or even -120, so it's a tougher market to beat. But not that it's not beatable, I just haven't dived into it. As far as following like Sunbelt, Conference USA, those type of things, Twitter is a great resource to follow their team beat writer. Nobody's going to know these teams and give out information better than the team's beat writer. So I try to research that and follow those guys. Also, the local newspapers usually put out like website style and really try to find articles like that on injuries, how a quarterback's playing, things like that.
I will say this, Google News is a powerful tool. If you use it correctly, you can find updated information that most other handicappers aren't going to find.
Thanks, guys.
Powerful tool.
And also in the totals market, I brought up the point move. In the totals market, it will even be more.
Sure.
And in the totals market is good things to find. The offensive coordinator is looking to go more up tempo. Obviously look to bet the over, things like that.
I have a question. All right, so in the college markets, when you're on a Saturday and you see that slate and it's like amazingly long, I mean, how do you manage your time? How are you efficient? How do you know what to look at? How do you qualify? Where are you going to go? I mean, I know we talk about small market teams, but there's just crap load.
The first thing I do is I throw out as many games as I can.
Okay.
And that literally is the first thing I'm going to do when I go to a college football, when I look at a college football board. And the lines, BOL will post. BOL, you guys, I know for a long time you posted first. I know that
they did last year in the college market.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to have my numbers ready by the time the BOL numbers come out, because BOL numbers are oftentimes off-market number, so you can really find some really good value with those wagers right at the open. But I'm going to have my numbers ready for the market, and the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the games where my number is right by where the market number is. All right, I got nothing there, I got nothing there. The second thing I'm going to do is take a look at the games that I just don't have a good feel on this team. Oh boy, this is a weird spot. I don't know how they, boom, throw it away. And before I even get down to the nuts and bolts of handicapping for that week, you take a 60-game college football card, I probably eliminated half the games a priori. I'm not trying to bust through and find every tidbit of information about every single team every week. You can't do it. It's not doable. So that's my, the first thing I want to do is throw games out that I'm not going to, I'm going to spend 5 minutes with, but I'm not going to spend any more than that. And boom, they're off the equation. Same thing for NFL. I'll probably eliminate at least a third and sometimes half the games before I really get into digging. What's your strategy with that, Drew?
Actually, I go into it and make my own number. So before BetOnline even comes out, I'll have ULM's favored by 3 over Texas State. And if they have a different number, I just use numbers. How far is it off? And that's how much I bet against into their number. So I try to keep as much opinion, other people's opinion, and just look at facts and look at the numbers, my number versus their number, and go head to head.
Okay. And you do that for every game? Or are they certain KPIs that you qualify?
If I'm unsure, I'm concentrating in the Sun Belt, Conference USA, and the MAC. Okay. So in those conferences, yes, I go right at them. In the other conferences, I have a little bit less confidence. So I might not have a number, and I'm not involved in that game.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
My question's on banking, and I thought it was brilliant, like your idea of having multiple bankrolls for multiple books, correct, in a sense. So how the difficult challenges that especially new bettors that they'll go through of setting up offshore accounts that they can actually set up these separate accounts and between the books and moving the money. Is that a difficult thing to do?
That's one of the advantages of living in Las Vegas, to be perfectly honest, is that you don't have that issue. Although in Las Vegas now, in terms of an app betting, I do most of my betting on my phone, and oh shit, I ran through my Canner account again. I got to freaking go reload there. I got to take money out of William Hill and put it in a Canner. That'll happen in Vegas or offshore, but
Specifically, you were telling people to set up different bankrolls.
Right.
I'm looking at that as different accounts completely, so we don't get the money mixed up, not necessarily on the spreadsheets.
Not at all. I'm not only betting my future wagers here, and then only betting my in-game wagers here, and only betting my my sides and totals over here. I want to be able to take advantage of the best line available from any given sports book for the particular wager I want to make. So when I'm putting my spreadsheets together, all right, I made this bet at Intertops and this bet at UWager. I'm not just, here's my Intertops spreadsheet.
So but basically you keep it all in one bank account and you just have it more in a spreadsheet, not necessarily.
Exactly.
But what about the human behavior of seeing money in that account and trying to stop their impulses? Because the money's there and it's easy to move. I thought you were talking about maybe setting up different bank accounts so you couldn't make that mistake.
I mean, to be realistic, I don't think it's a realistic goal to look out at an audience of guys and say, all right, of guys who are doing, the majority of people are doing this part-time. The advantage that Drew and I both have is that we're doing it full-time. And when you're doing it full-time, it's not a hobby, it's a job. And you can spend more time. But for your average punter, your average bettor, it's not a matter of, you don't need 50 spreadsheets, just this is how I'm doing with my half times. These are the halftime way. These are what I'm doing in running. These are my sides. These are my totals. These are my future. It allows you to track it effectively, even if you're going at different books with the wagers that you're making, if that makes sense.
I think we had a question back here before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a question for Drew, really. When you look at a game and you think it's like +3 on one side, if the result is different from what you expect, how do you adjust the next week? Do you say, it wasn't, I wasn't wrong, it was a different factor, or how do you adjust as you go forward?
That's a great question. It's an evolving process. I've made some, so you're saying like if I have it +3 and then they just get blown out, but I bet them +3?
Yeah, do you still have faith in your number, or do you, when do you start to adjust?
Yeah, I reevaluate the next week, but I'll tell you, that's part of the problems I've had in the past, and I'm still learning myself. For instance, when Georgia Southern, the couple years they were just steamrolling the Sun Belt, I couldn't adjust fast enough, and I lost money on them. So I've learned from that, and try to make a strong move as far as what number I'm going to move if the team is really killing the team. And actually, I have a show called Marketology on SBR. I interviewed Chris Andrews, who's kind of a trailblazer in college football, the sports director at South Point in Vegas. And that's the same mistake he made. He said in the small conferences, he wasn't making strong enough moves and he was getting beat by it. So you get kind of, I guess, an opinion from the sports bettor and the sportsbook director on the other side of the counter. As far as small markets, you got to make bigger moves because the variance in the talent level can be more than, let's just say, an SEC West team.
Let me jump in just a quick addendum to that. It's a big difference if, like week 1, a team comes out and just steamrolls someone. You're going to make a much bigger adjustment to your number and have less faith in your original number than if that same steamrolling happened in week 6 and you already had 5 weeks worth of data. So you make your big adjustments early. Mid-season, you know, and again, I do a post-mortem on every bet that I make. You know, was it a wrong side? If it was wrong, why? You know, was it bad? You know, did I turn the ball over 6 times? Did I miss the spot? Did I miss the matchups? You know, what in my handicap was wrong, so that you can learn from it before you make more wagers on those same teams or other teams. Conceptually, you want to make sure that you have, you're not just pissing money away. But when it comes to a single week of outlier performance, a performance with enormous variance compared to where you thought it was going to be, mid-season, I'm not going to make huge adjustments, and I'm still going to trust my numbers moving forward. I might make a small adjustment. Now, you have to make some adjustment to it, but you're not going to make a massive adjustment like you might in week 1, week 2, week 3, when some of these teams may well be mispriced by a relatively significant amount. Does that make sense?
Guys, I got a question for you, if I may. We know it's all about value in everything that we do. And as we're getting ready for this 2017 season, what value plays do you guys see as being the best value in season win totals for both college and NFL teams?
You want to do college? I got an NFL that I was going to talk at the end, but then I guess I ran it.
I like the ULM Warhawks. Matt Viator in his 3rd year, what he did at McNeese State. He's been recruiting at a pretty good level. I know it's tough to get kids into Monroe, Louisiana, but I think that their quarterback position as well, they've had some injuries at the quarterback position. The backup's also pretty good, and an athletic dude. So that's something going into season win totals. If one quarterback goes down and you're betting an over, it can really kill you. So to have 2 good quarterbacks, I think that they have that. They're really well coached, and their season win total at the South Point is only 3.5. And you got to remember, in the small markets, there's a lot more variance as far as from one year to the next. You can really improve to even get to a bowl. So I think the 3.5 is a little bit short on ULM.
And I'll give you one from the NFL. I mean, I got New England Patriots under 13 wins in my pocket. I advise my clients to bet it at 12.5. I think that's a ridiculous number. In the modern era, you can't ask a team to win more than 12 games. I don't care how good they are. And everyone's looking at the Patriots' schedule saying, oh, the Patriots' schedule is so weak. It isn't. It's much tougher than last year. Their division is weak. You know, the Jets stink, the Dolphins have issues, the Bills have issues. And yet you look year in, year out, the Patriots tend to go 5-1, 4-2 in division. There's always they always get upset, an average of 1.5 times a year over the last 5 years, even with much better teams than everyone else in division. So I gave them a 1.5 in division. And even if they only have one, at 5-1 in division, New England's still going to go under 12.5 wins this year. That number is an outlier when it comes to the modern markets, and there's no handicapping involved. This number can't be there in NFL 2017. No team can be lined at 12.5, or especially 13. Especially 13 is just, they have to go 14-2 to beat you. Teams don't go 14-2 every year, Mark. You know that as well as anybody. Even when they were great last year, and oh my God, they came back from 28-3 in the Super Bowl. What do they have? Like a stretch of 5 out of 6 on the road. They have, it's not an easy slate for New England. Their strength of schedule looks weak just because they have the nobody good in their division. But when you look at the aggregate schedule, they have at least half a dozen losable games, and that's if they don't have a nasty upset.
You've also got that bullseye in their back too.
You think?
We got to move on. Do it real quick. You okay? Okay. Sweet.
Thank you so much, guys.
Hey, can we get a big round of applause right here? Mr. Teddy Covers, Mr. Drew